Hi everybody, welcome to my channel Ramble. My name is Desiree. Today with me I have Ciaran Foley. He is the CEO of Virtual Universe. It is something that will be combining a role-playing game with blockchain technology, and he is going to tell us more about it, and I'm going to ask him some questions. So hi Ciaran.
Desiree, great to meet you. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
So could you tell me what is Virtual Universe, first of all?
Sure, absolutely. You got to the point pretty quickly there. It is an MMORPG. Means it's massively multiplayer. You've got a lot of players inside of it, and it's a story-driven adventure set in a living virtual reality world. So it's as much something you play like a game as something that you would visit. And our focus as a company is on user engagement. What that means is, if we can keep your attention over months and years, we've done our job. And we do that with a multi-year storyline. So as I mentioned, it's story-driven. And we encourage users not only to play, but also to socialize and create within that environment. And as you mentioned, underlying all of this is a unique blockchain-driven economy that allows players to exchange value as they're playing the game.
Okay, well, the first thing you mentioned engagement over time, and I went to your website, and I was very taken in by, I guess, the visuals. It's sort of like, I don't play much video games, but when I was first introduced to what the VUToken is, someone likened it to Ready Player One, which I just saw. I just saw that movie like a month ago, I think. And I found that very beautiful, the idea of it, because in some ways I think our physical selves are like avatars, and so you get to have another option. But at the same time, I think it's kind of scary if you could get lost in that, for a long time, and then I turn into someone like, I don't know, one of my brothers plays a lot of video games, and I don't know, I guess, could you talk a little bit about that? I guess the more philosophical stuff behind it.
Absolutely.
What you think about that.
Yeah, and it's clear where the trajectory is going, right? I mean, whether or not we're in virtual reality today or not, we're often looking down at our phones when we're sitting at dinner. And so I think from a personal philosophical point of view, it's still super important, obviously, to have exchanges in real life and to really put the technology away at the appropriate time. So with that said, however, we can see where the world is going. And you need only look at kids who are 15 and under to look at how really they're using gaming as their next generation social tools. What do I mean by that? Well, while their parents are using Facebook and even Instagram today and other tools, the kids now actually are using these massively multiplayer arenas as a form of social exchange. All their friends are within this world. And you'll also notice a tendency for some of these games to be built on what we call sort of open world experiences, where the games go on for long durations, and there are many things that can be done within those worlds. So as a result of that, the kids, rather than sharing photos of their real life, they're showing videos of their experiences within the games. And yes, that can be frightening to those of us who are a little older, but it's really where the trajectory is going. And I think there's good and bad with that both. But we know where that's headed, and Virtual Universe is really going to capitalize upon that tendency, but do it, I think, in a very positive way.
Okay, could you tell me a bit about the storyline? I read something about some human colony on some other planet, and everything else is gone. Could you just like draw people in a bit to what the backstory is that they would be joining?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And a lot of it is under wraps at the moment. And frankly, it's going to be developed over time, because remember, this is a game where we don't disappear for 5 years and then deliver the game. We're actually planning on delivering the game somewhere in the next 12 months or so, the version 1, and then building it with both our team, but also with the community. And that's a super important aspect of this. But the base story involves Earth basically becoming uninhabitable. And so in an effort to find a way to continue surviving, humanity has figured out a way to beam our souls or our essences into these robots, these nanobots, on another planet. Why? Because space travel is difficult and time consuming. So we've already sent our robots over there. And now we're inhabiting these robots on another planet. We're starting to build our first city. The city is called VUToken, and inside that city, you're going to find opportunities to have your own house or place to exist and exchange socially, as well as build, as well as adventure. And of course, there are going to be some mysteries and adventures, and something negative will happen somewhere that's going to really start, engaging players. So that's about all I can say right now. But that's where the story begins.
Okay, well, that's very exciting to me. I hope for people watching too, that's exciting. Could you talk a bit about the blockchain economy and
Sure.
why you think what benefit that's providing to versus what already exists for role-playing games like that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So if you look at role-playing games that are out there, digital role-playing games, there has been the notion for many, many years, the notion of sort of a tokenized economy. Players who play games today, they're used to free-to-play models where they're able to come into a world like this and then upgrade their avatars, upgrade their experience, be able to speed up certain processes in the game, be able to attain certain valuable assets. And indeed, that play has extended to what has become a $15 to $20 billion virtual goods market today. There are literally objects being exchanged on decentralized exchanges today, like Wax. For instance, a number of weeks ago, a virtual knife. For those of us who don't play these games, the virtual knife is just bits. That's it. Can't do anything in real life. But this knife was sold for something close to $63,000 in real USD currency. So there's a huge economy within all of these games and now starting to emerge between all of these games. So in Virtual Universe, we took a look at that and we thought blockchain can play a really essential role in this game. Why? Well, the most obvious use of blockchain technology and cryptocurrency would be to create a virtual token. So that's what we did. We call it VUToken or VUToken. And VUToken really amounts to no more than the essential unit of exchange of value, right, inside the game. But if you look at blockchain technology itself, that's really where the excitement comes in beyond just the crypto token, and that is the ability of blockchain, for instance, to serve as an immutable and transparent record of ownership within the game. And believe it or not, just one of the many issues that these games face, because remember, some of these are making up to $1 billion per year or more, is graft, corruption, right? Problems with people stealing things. And right off the bat, as a single example, blockchain could solve that problem.
Yeah, and it would be integrated within the game, because I was just thinking while you were talking that if, say, example, you were to introduce the idea of the cryptocurrency to an already existing game, then everybody would have to sort of sign up for that and to, I guess, keep a record of what's being purchased or sold or what they've won through completing some task in the game. But if it's already integrated within the game itself, then all of that is sort of happening in the background automatically.
That is correct. And it's transparent, which means that if you've got it on a blockchain, the players can see what's going on. It's not up to us as a company to sort of keep that information to ourselves, keep it secret. You know, we're going to transfer that information. One other interesting point to blockchain is there are a number of different competing projects out there that are in the sort of gaming space that are talking about decentralization. Now, today, the reality of decentralized VR experiences or gaming experiences is far away from practicable, as you can imagine. The scalability, the responsiveness, basically the speed of the network can't do that. But in the future, we could see elements of this game being distributed across different networks. And that brings in some of the advantages that decentralization also provides vis-a-vis blockchain.
Okay. Why did you... I want to hear more about you, as in Ciaran, your, I guess, history in these kinds of games. And was it your idea, or did you start it with someone else? Was there a moment where you were playing some game and then you like learned about blockchain and then you were like, oh, Spark in your mind? I saw that there on the website you said that there were some of the developers that were working on this or had worked on some other really popular games that I don't know much about them. I just know their names. And could you talk more about like the history and what you're bringing to this new project?
I'd be happy to. And we're really careful to talk about team because this is by no means my company. I'm the CEO, but this is really a team of three that came together basically by happenstance, by luck, by good luck, and also through bringing a lot of experience to the table. So it's a really experienced management team. We were founded in 2013, and three of us came together, Jeroen van den Bosch and Bob Curtis and myself. And Jeroen had just completed a sort of storied career in gaming over in Belgium. I helped launch CSR Racing, Clumsy Ninja, had built a multi tens of millions of visitors per month website in the gaming industry that was then sold to Belgicom. And just to give you an idea about his personality, he actually, on a lark in between gigs, filmed himself, sent in a videotape to MTV Belgium, and got awarded a 3-year contract to run a gaming show on MTV.
Wow.
So
it's a big personality.
Yeah, definitely risk taker, what have you. And he met Palmer Luckey just before coming over to the United States and realized that his interest in gaming and his experience in building these big communities, this was the right timing. It was just the beginning of VR. Let's start looking at what we can do, and decided to be close to Oculus and moved here to Irvine, California, where he met Bob and myself. And Bob's career, Bob actually helped start one of the first VR companies about 16 years ago. They're still an ongoing concern today, but they do more simulation. And he's also had multiple fundings, multiple exits, including a $1 billion exit to Cardinal Healthcare. So a lot of business experience there. For my own experience, I started out in another very innovative and early stage industry, which was the internet. I started out by founding one of the first website design and then application development firms in the world back in the early 90s, and ran that for about a decade. And both Bob and I connected about 13, 14 years ago. We're helping companies in the local area with sort of startup and growth. And in comes Jeroen and says, hey, I got an idea for a business. Can you take a look at it? And over the next couple of years, we did a lot of research, started forming the central idea of what virtual universe has become, ended up getting some basic angel investment, and also launched an early test out to the marketplace to some 15,000 customers and gathered data and what have you. So this is really the culmination of that research, because we knew we were too early. It's also the culmination of each of our experiences. I mean, I'm a gamer, an avid gamer. Jeroen obviously comes from gaming, and Bob from the VR field. And each of us are creative, sort of bring a different angle to the table. And the development team that you speak of, with programmers who've worked on Assassin's Creed and Halo and a bunch of other big, AAA titles. One interesting aspect of that team is that they're worldwide, and they really love the idea of working on a title like this because it is so innovative. You're not just creating yet another gun or yet another texture for one of the big AAA titles. You're really trying to figure this thing out because this is very new.
I'm not actually understanding how is it very new, because of the blockchain aspect of it, or because of the story aspect of it?
It's very new because in VR, we don't know how to do many of the things that we do in the existing modes of software. So really, this is a culmination of a lot of different ideas, right? We can do massively multiplayer games, but in 2D. We understand how to locomote in those games and to use a game controller. But there are certain subtle aspects to VR which are massively different than delivering a game on any of these other systems. I'll give you a couple examples. One is, if you stand next to me, that sense of presence that you have, you can't get on any other platform. So it doesn't matter whether you're talking about IMAX, you're talking about TV or video games. It doesn't matter. It's not the same. The other is a sense of presence and immersion that you get from VR, the ability to feel like you're there. And so these are just some of the qualities that we're capitalizing upon. And the whole industry is trying to figure out, can we just directly translate these video games that we've had so many years to this platform? And here's the answer. No, you can't. Because VR demands a lot more of the player, right? The player has to look around, they have to move around, they have to put on, right now, this clunky gear. Over time, that's going to become better. Right now, we're early in the industry. But all of those are roadblocks to people who want to play these types of games. And so what we've seen already happen is a lot of the developers who are really good at video games and movies, etc., they've sort of come into the field and said, hey, we'll just translate what we did before. And guess what? It doesn't really work. That's why a company like Immersive Entertainment and this type of virtual universe experience has to be created. This is what is going to be built for what we call VR first. It's really aimed at VR.
I put on a VR headset once, and I was looking at, I think it was Google Maps or Google Earth or something like that. And
yes.
It was really freaky.
How did it make you feel?
Well, it's just weird because it was like it was like my senses were being screwed with, because I wasn't like looking at like a painting. I was like in it, you know? And yes. I think, and it was like I was flying. That was the other thing, because you were looking from above. So it's not to sound super cheesy, but it's almost like doing things VR is bringing people closer to dreaming, you know, like if you have a dream and you see things that just would never happen in your real life, but it feels more like you're immersed in it, like the word you use about immersive, I think you said entertainment or something like that.
Yes. And that's very well put. And guess what happens with that? What's interesting is, we don't get too much into the science of it. Again, we've done
I think you should get into the science if you can.
Okay,
that's
fair enough. So
yeah.
so we've done a lot of research in this area, because as a company with experienced executives, we knew that we were too early back in 2013. We knew that we couldn't really form a company with a product yet. We didn't want to race to market simply to make money, right? And a lot of the entrants, when you see early technologies like this, a lot of the entrants will come in, and game companies will say, oh, great, this is another screen. Movie companies will say, I can reach more eyeballs, and they'll try to make money. But guess what? Those titles fail. So you'll get a little hit, and then they'll just disappear. And you get what you get right now, which is sort of what's called the trough of disillusionment, when everybody thinks this thing was going to be so great, and now it's disappeared. Where is VR?
Yeah.
But we knew, sort of the experienced developers inside the space and technologists know how early we are. That was just an initial irrational exuberance, and now the industry will be starting in the next months, not yet, but it's beginning. So anyway, back to the issue of this sort of immersion, persistence, scale, feeling in that experience that you're sort of godlike, floating above the world and able, right?
Yeah.
Those are all qualities that are interesting in many respects, but one of them is this. Imagine you're a child of the next decade, right, rather than today. And you're now living, good portions of what you do are in virtual in some way. And again, it could be across this continuum of virtual, whether it's augmented reality or virtual reality. Either you're inside the game completely, or some of the game is entering your real world. In some way, you're going to be interacting with virtual. And what's happening is that technology, much like a dream, will inhabit your memories. You'll have memories of having done things in those worlds and done things with people. And some of those will be in work settings, and some of them will be in entertainment settings. But it's going to feel completely different than you feel today. Here's another remarkable aspect of this. We're talking today about blockchain, right? Technologies and cryptocurrency potentially bringing a mass audience from the world stage, those who are otherwise unbanked, into becoming productive citizens in the digital age, right?
Right.
We think that virtual technologies are going to be an essential part of that. Why? Because we're no longer worried about whether we are, in fact, in a fancy office somewhere. If we have high-speed connectivity and we've got a high-end phone sometime into the future and a bit of virtual, we'll be able to collaborate with people around the world and do things that up until recently you've only been able to do at a desk with people physically, and have those memories and have those truly sort of human experiences. I'm not going to say, it'll ever necessarily replace person to person.
Yeah.
But consider for a moment what can be done among groups around the world, including the developers that we have that have regular meetings in virtual reality today. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's really amazing because it's I feel like I'm on repeat because whenever anyone talks about blockchain, they say this, but it really is lowering the barrier to entry to participate in, I guess, the global economy, you could say. That's specifically how I feel about one of the project that I primarily work with. This is building a marketplace. But
so think of blockchain as lowering the friction on exchange of value, and think of VR and AR as lowering the friction in terms of collaboration. And then you start to get the idea as to how those two can come together to produce all sorts of different effects, including in entertainment.
Yeah, something I just thought about was the amount of information that has to be put into a 3D space, especially if it's not just Earth, because I'm going to guess that you guys are going to detail everything on the Earth, and then at some point, maybe like 100 years in the future, down to the veins on a leaf or something. I don't know. But then also like the whole solar system, I was just seeing, what do you call it? A physical depiction of the distance between the planets in our solar system, which was like freaking me out because it's like different countries.
You get that sense of scale, right?
Right. And then are you guys going to have that also in your, and are you going to map to actual physical, I guess, like galaxies, or are you going to make it up? That's the question.
So there's all sorts of gameplay mechanics that you have to sort of cheat on, and one of those gameplay mechanics is how do you get from point A to point B? It's going to be really boring if you have to spend 3 years waiting for the next planet to show up, right? So there's going to be some unreality involved for sure. But to your point, what's interesting about that is, you'll see a number of companies in VR attempting to create metaverses. And that's a nice fancy name for locations, right? Places you can be. Here's the challenge in VR today is that I could create a house for you to walk through. I could create a spaceship. I could create a planet. And that's really modeling it. You can attain some of that data from the real world if you want to, or you can just draw it inside the computer and create it that way. But the problem remains this, that most of the metaverses being created today, they don't touch us emotionally. They're just an empty shell. Unless you have people in the metaverse and you also have cues that allow you to feel like that metaverse is living. In other words, things are happening inside of it. And in fact, that the non-players inside of it, whether they be objects or animals or other things, plants, that they feel real, then you don't feel like it's really a living place. So you feel always you're in a game. And so one of the other areas that we're researching right now and doing a lot of work in is how do you make a location, right, connect with the user? So while they're playing in virtual universe, we've done a lot of work in AI as well. And you'll notice in a fully functional demo that we have right now, we've created various animal models, including a bird. Sounds simple, right? Bird brain. But that bird brain has some 5,000 lines of code in it. And the bird has a sense of hunger. It can see you. It can differentiate colors. It can differentiate other birds I'm
freaking out.
Right?
Listen to what you're saying,
It can sense the ecology or the environment. And it also knows what time it is. So if it's nighttime, it's going to go to bed. Now, imagine now you have 5 or 6 of those birds flying around in a scene inside your metaverse. Suddenly things seem more real. Why? Because we as human beings, guess what we're good at? We're good at spotting patterns. And if you create fake animations inside a game that just loop, boom, you're out of that sense of immersion. So this is one of the areas of concentration for virtual universe that we're working on right now is, again, I'm not promising you that we're going to have anything like Westworld.
Maybe not to begin, but it will develop.
But we have to make it that much more realistic. And so, yes, it'll be realistic in some ways. In other ways, it'll be unrealistic. But it will. Here's the key to all of this. And I gave a talk a couple years ago at a university, and I asked the crowd, and I said, what's the most important platform that we're designing for? What is that platform? And today, of course, the blockchain people will say, okay, well, it's Ethereum, or it's going to be, EOS or whatever it is. And then the VR people all say HTC Vive or Oculus or Samsung's headset or whatever, or one of the game engines. And the answer is none of those things. It's none of those things. The ultimate platform that we're designing for is right here. It's right here. That's the platform, right? And here's the to think about. Virtual reality is so intimate. It is the most intimate technology we've designed. It is going to be wearable in augmented reality. It's wearable in virtual reality. It knows how your body moves. It will be giving you feedback pretty soon where you'll feel things, right? It can register your heart rate down the line. How more intimate can you get? And so what does that future look like? How do those interfaces work? And what are the worlds you're going to inhabit? Those are the questions that we're starting to answer.
Wow. Wow is my response to that. There's something else I wanted to ask, but I'm not. It slipped my mind. So I'll move on.
Sure.
When exactly did this start? And could you give me the timeline, like the projection that you guys have? I think I saw something about you have a pre-sale going on right now that ends really, really soon. I believe that's you.
We do, and it was slated for the end of the month. That may change as things do within this market, as we know within the token sale market. The one thing we would be very careful about is not misrepresenting, and so we're right now we're looking at maybe putting the pre-sale on pause, but I'll have more news on that soon. The bottom line is this: we're looking for a certain minimum amount of funding, and when we attain that funding, here's what the timeline looks like. It looks like a mobile web version of what you see on the portal today being created within about 3 to 4 months. That mobile web version will allow you to then interact with the beginning of this world. And as you know, we've started selling having claims on apartments within the world that's coming. And we now have about 17,000, almost 18,000 players registered. So it's pretty significant within about a week or two. So we know that there's demand. Now the key is to give everybody access to this world through their mobile phone and through the web. And allow them to start interacting. And so we were going to do some additional stuff on the blockchain using that application. Most likely we'll begin generating some small revenues during that time. So that's the next 3 to 4 months after funding. Mm-hmm. And then we're looking at a release schedule in the next 7 to 8 months following the funding event. We look at beta opportunities for some select users and people who have joined the team to actually come into sections of the universe as it's being built and test things out. So again, this is all about engaging with the players. We want them to be happy. And so we believe in being stealthy about the whole story. There are going to be some great surprises. But we also believe in engaging them and testing things, and so it's going to give us a lot of data. And then about 12 months, about a year after we get the initial funding, we're looking at version 1, what we would call version 1 of the commercial release, which will allow you to fully interact in this first district, fully interact and start your own business within the district, and also communicate, socialize, and start playing the storyline.
I just thought about something. Do you think that the technology that we have now, say the mobile phones or my MacBook in front of me, if those are powerful enough to handle the kind of experience that you and the team want to create?
And by the way, I could talk about this all day long, so take all you like. Okay. But I want to test the audience's resolve. So here's the simple answer to that. What we're working on is not sort of simple game studio stuff that you see on these types of headsets like the Oculus Go and others. These are standalone headsets that are basically phones in a box. And again, very early, but this represents something that's tremendously successful in that they've been able to get the price point of this down to about $200. So that's huge for the industry. Nevertheless, when you look at this, it's not super powerful. If you think about what we're trying to do, fully synthetic worlds with AI, with a lot of interaction, with a lot of graphical detail, and then cryptocurrency and being able to run businesses within it, you're talking about in the beginning high-end headsets. So virtual universe will be available initially to high-end headset owners on PCs, which means right now HTC, Vive, and Oculus Rift users. But it's not going to stay that way forever, because as the market grows, guess what's going to happen? These things are going to become more popular every year, or more powerful, excuse me. And so we're already starting to see that consoles may be the next generation of virtual universe once we get things working on the PC. And one day down the line, yes, you'll be able to play it here. Also, just want to leave you with one other thought. again, remember how I talked about virtual reality and augmented reality as being a continuum. There will be a time at some point, and it may be within the context of virtual universe, where you'll be able to take out certain parts of that experience and play them in your living room, and have them connect to this virtual universe. Why not? So you could play it in augmented reality. But again, that's science fiction right now. I don't want to give anybody, illusions that's going to happen tomorrow, because that's part of the challenge. But that is some of the exciting stuff that's coming to gaming and experiential gaming today. Think about this. Today, when we game, we go into the game and then we come out to reality. But what if you were able to play all of these sorts of games inside a virtual environment and come out into a virtual environment and socialize? That is the type of future that we're talking about.
Yeah. What are the incentives for people coming in? I just thought about the apartments. That's one obvious thing. And then I was thinking, maybe, is there a way, my mind is racing, is there a way for people to, within the game, create something within it? Like, can you make a creation within the game? Because I think that's one of the beautiful things about real life. And there's one more thing.
No, that's a great question.
I know I haven't given you the chance to answer it, but I thought about this earlier and then I forgot about it. So I want to say that one thing you could do to make the world seem more real for people coming in is, once I had this dream that was super realistic to me, and I was really weirded out. I was like, oh, is this some other dimension or something? So I went and I asked people in my dream if they were real, and they all told me yes, and they were offended at me asking if they were real. And I think that it sounds really simple, but I think something like that, you could put that in there if someone tries to do something, ask a question like that to a non-real player in the game, then they could be like, what kind of question is this? Obviously I'm a real person, or something like that.
Sure.
But I know I didn't allow you to answer the other question about incentives.
Yeah, to your question about the creation, this is a living, sort of persistent world. And so one of the key aspects to this is that people have to become invested in this. And by investment, I don't mean just money. I mean creativity and energy, right? And so if people what do we do in real life? We co-create our world. We furnish our houses, we go out there and we create things and we sell them to other people, or we give them away. We express ourselves. If those elements don't exist in a multi-year game, in VR, I don't know where they should exist, because it's a natural to keep people engaged, but also to allow them feel like they have a stake in that world. You want the world to feel real. So to that end, and to your comment, yes, absolutely. In fact, we're pioneering a set of tools that are more like Minecraft than they are, for instance, like a tool, and again, nothing against it, but like Sansar or others that kind of make you a developer. You've got to become a developer. You've got to script things. You've got to do things complex. We're looking at something where you can use your hands inside the game and literally make things for other people. And if you want to make things for other people for profit, you could do that. If you simply want to make things to make your world cozier and more familiar, you can do that as well. And those tools are difficult to make. Let me tell you, when you don't use existing metaphors like 3D object interfaces on a computer with a mouse and everything else, you have to think, okay, if this world were completely malleable, how would I allow you to change it? And those are some of the problems that we're solving in terms of making. But right now we do have a prototype of that, and you can actually make things within the world, move objects around and what have you. Yep.
Okay. Something that I realize I don't fully understand is how the headsets correlate with the PCs. I'm thinking that how powerful the PC is will affect how you experience the game, but it sounded like you were saying how the headset is more impactful in the experience of the game details.
Yeah. So it depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about a headset like this, which is standalone, you've got inside of this a screen, which is basically spit up through optics, and you've got a CPU and sometimes a GPU, something that calculates numbers and then graphics and what have you, and feeds that information in real time, so that when the sensors inside of this move, right, the computer inside of here is recalculating the image and drawing it for you in real time. The same thing is happening on a PC-based VR setup. except the majority of computation is being done inside the computer and the PC, and the majority of the sensing and the display is being done in the headset. So you're absolutely right. When you talk about power, it just depends on which setup you're talking about. If you're talking about a PC VR setup, it's the power of the computer and the graphics chip in that by far. And then the advanced optics, how wide a field of view do you get? What type of resolution of screen? And then what's the latency or the delay between actually moving and seeing the image change? And much the same inside these standalone headsets, except for the fact that you're not talking about tethering. It's all self-contained.
Sorry, I said that you tripped out for a second. You're not talking about what? It's all self-contained? What did you say?
Oh, except in the case of these portable units, we don't have to worry about latency from the computer to this because the computer's in this. You're literally, you're looking at the computer and the display directly. So when we have a tethered setup, there's a little bit of delay between the computer, what it's manufacturing for the display to display. And so there's just some of the technical considerations in addition to optics and everything else.
Okay, and you said you have time, so I have more questions that just came up. Do you guys?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, happy to.
Okay, what do you think about like something like identity theft within the game? You think that will be harder because of the crypto aspect that makes it harder for someone to know your private key, or do you use crypto just for monetary exchange or like buying real estate and seeing how property changes hands? Or do you think it will also be from the very beginning, like when you log in, it's tied to some identity on the blockchain? Sure. Or have you thought about that yet? I don't know.
Well, you remember we talked a lot about sort of the human aspect of all of this stuff. And some of the human aspects have to do with things like identity, have to do with privacy, have to do with how much information. One of the let's start with VR as being very intimate. We could know a lot about you based upon your movement inside this universe, and we're going to use that information to make the universe actually change in real time to you. So we're going to learn how you operate, and we're going to make it more engaging based upon your your physiology. That's some secret sauce, but that's part of what we're aiming to do. But again, what happens if you see that someone has a tremor? That could be private information, right? So we've seen over the last number of years, various social networks like Facebook and others have really, shaken society with the fact that people are finally realizing, wow, these things are collecting a lot of information on me. So we very much believe in sort of a user bill of rights, that would allow you to control the data that you generate on a system like this. So that's something that we want to bake into this world, because we don't want to become a social network that necessarily knows everything about you in the real world. That's not our objective. Our objective is to create a synthetic world and a game experience and an entertainment experience that keeps you coming back. But for our parts, in the real world, if we want to advertise to you, what have you in the real world, we need to know a lot about you. We don't need to do that if you keep coming into our world. We can actually engage with you there, and that becomes very profitable from a business standpoint. But it should also be enjoyable for the user, and it should also be safe. So it really doesn't matter to us necessarily. I think, and we've had discussions about this internally. Beyond simply age verification and knowing that you kind of are who you say you are, so that we can counter abuse, which is another issue, right, inside some of these worlds. I think the less we know about you, the better, quite frankly. Yeah.
I was just thinking, so would someone be able to adopt a evil role or persona within the game because, I don't know, they like that? Is that something that would possible, or will there be like limits? Like, I don't know. Or will people be able to create their own, I don't know. I guess the possibilities persona, are kind of, like they could just make. Yeah.
So remember we were talking about how, all things have kind of come before. And I remember during the beginning of the internet, you had the beginning of IRC and chat and what have you, and this is way before even AOL chat and other instant messaging type services. And you had a lot of abuse on there, but you also had a lot of amazing creativity. So that's the balance in a civil society, right? So it depends on what type of society we want to create within the game. So there's going to be certain user standards, absolutely. I mean, we have to. And in VR, interestingly enough, there are some interesting abuses that can occur in VR that can't occur elsewhere. For instance, I can block your way physically if you're trying to move, and I can literally physically become more imposing to you than I could in other games. You just get that feeling. It's just one example. So we want to discourage that type of behavior, but I could see a time when, for instance, in some part of the storyline, we do incorporate people who want to be a little more creative and maybe throw a monkey wrench into the system, right? Add some element of competition or challenge or puzzle. And so in that way, if you call it being evil, it could be the foil, right? It's sort of the foil character.
Yeah.
Why not? Absolutely. But it all has to be done in the service of a game that ends up becoming not only engaging but enjoyable for those players. And we just don't want people coming out of this thing, okay, this has become like one of these other platforms, which is basically simply chaos and abuse. We really don't want to err on that side.
Yeah. I keep thinking of other ideas.
That's okay.
So you mentioned earlier the opportunity for multiverses. And thinking about the question I just asked you, is it possible that you could have different rules for different universes, I guess, that you enter, where maybe there are different social rules about what is and isn't acceptable here, but then also would it be possible to create different universes where there are different physical properties that go on? Like, is that, because that would be really cool, because then you could create different things based on, I don't know, like how much gravity there is, or what's the main liquid that falls from the sky, or I don't know, something like that.
See, I think you've got a new role after you get your master's degree. Come on over and you can help us. You're absolutely right. Yes. And in fact, so if you look at those two elements, the elements of behavior and the physical elements and behavior of the physical laws, we can warp both. And so the physical laws could be changed in any way you want. In fact, some parts of this adventure, we're already kind of thinking of things like that. How do we mess with your sense of scale, for instance, make you feel really small or really huge? Gravity is another one, although you have to be careful about VR sickness these days, but that'll be something we'll address. And then with respect to the whole rule set around that universe, yes. So metaverses are a ways off. And the reason why is it's very easy. Again, I'll point to the engineering mindset versus the product business entertainment mindset. Our mindset is, again, starts with the user first. A lot of engineering's mindset starts with how are we going to do this because it's cool? We're going to do this because the hardware can do it. We want to be very, very careful of that. Can we do X, Y, and Z? The answer is almost always yes. It's incredible the number of directions you could take with this. But you'll never get there if you don't create something that's defined and that allows users to enter and then expand into that. And then timing is really a key here. Timing with respect to the size of the market and also timing with respect to the technology. But I can envision at some point in the future, right, there will be spin-offs of this type of technology. We may provide them, maybe other partner companies will provide them, where you'll be able to spin up your own section of the universe, right, and connect to our own. And there are companies working on those types of technologies. There are companies out there right now that are saying, let's create the WordPress of VR. But we think that those are premature. What we're trying to do is let's create the on-ramp to getting the ordinary consumer engaged with this technology so they can start experiencing it, but not just experience what we're creating, actually have a hand in helping create it, because they're going to know more than we do about this stuff. But let's not expect them to be developers yet. Let's not expect that everybody in the world right now wants to spin up a virtual world. They don't even know what can be done with this stuff yet. That's how early we are.
Yeah, I think it's just something that's going to transform over time. I've always had this wish that I wish I could see what's going to happen in 50 years. And I wish I could be there 300 years from now just to see where humanity has taken its creations or where we've ended up in the universe. And this is going to be one of those things that I add into that wish that this project that you're working on is still there, and that I can see where it goes in 50 years time, because that would be,
I appreciate it.
You know,
I'd love to be here in 50 years myself.
Okay. We'll see. I think I'm all tapped out of questions. This is all fascinating to me, and I think the key is to really get the awareness out there, because it's not so clear until you hear someone like yourself explaining what it means, like what's actually being created, from just hearing about, oh, there's another RPG crypto thing coming out.
That's right. That's right. And I'll throw in a little bit of extra information about that, because we're often compared to some of those competitors. I won't name them here, but your audience will probably be familiar with them. And so how we're really different is that we believe in the human first, we believe in the story first, we believe in the entertainment and the engagement first. All of these technologies, and remember, this harkens back to both my experience and the team's experience very, very early on in other industries, in my case, the web. We had all the same discussions during the web. The same thing. The cryptocurrency is not that new. The idea of blockchain is not that new. This stuff has come around before. And the funny thing is, people's reaction is pretty much the same, and the industry's reaction is pretty much the same, and it follows a pattern. And so what we see out there today is the following pattern. Let's make money quickly. Let's figure this out. Those two things coming together and colliding quickly. And what we've seen is something that we don't think is as effective. So we think the gambling aspect of cryptocurrency, it has promise, but it's gambling. We also think that there are some great experiences out there on the crypto side, but not so good on the VR side. So there's not enough entertainment there. You've got to be engaged. But the crypto enthusiasts are enthusiastic about it because they're making some money off of it. And then on the VR side, we have issues too, because the sort of pure gaming experiences, they go by too fast and they engage your animal brain, so you're not immersed. The storytelling stuff is one and done, and the chat rooms are chaotic, and the tools are too complex. So what we aim to do is put together some of these elements and provide them to an audience that is not necessarily technical, but will be engaged emotionally. Right. And that's where we really differentiate ourselves. None of the other players right now that I'm aware of are story-driven, and none of them are looking at the scale that we are.
Yeah, I really hope that it goes very well and that I can help in some small way.
Sure. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like the audience to hear that I haven't really touched on or given you the chance to talk about so far?
I think just in general, again, having been around the block a few times and seeing the way that industries shape up, you're going to hear a lot of news out there about VR and cryptocurrency and how great they are and how horrible they are. And a lot of that news is fueled by wanting to sell headlines. That's it, pure and simple. So to really understand this, you have to take a bit of a deep dive. You have to understand, don't believe what you read. The articles, whether they're too positive or too negative, don't reflect reality. From our perspective, where we are right now is at the beginning of a tremendous revolution. And that tremendous revolution is the redefinition of how we interact with computing. It's no less than that. And you're seeing little bits of that in Siri and Google and what have you. You're going to see part of it come into this XD or XR stuff like virtual reality and augmented reality. Yeah. Likewise, on the blockchain side, you're looking at nothing short of the redefinition of how value is exchanged worldwide. But that doesn't mean that everything is either good or bad, that it's never going to come, that it's going to be regulated out and be destroyed. It is a very predictable curve that's coming, but only predictable if you've been there before. And so I'd say keep your cool and really look at the true value that all of these technologies deliver, whatever they might be. For our part, the value we want to play is, again, we want to understand engagement in virtual. And while we do that, if we do that successfully, we'll make a lot of revenue, by the way. And we'll use crypto as part of that and blockchain as part of that, and I think some pretty meaningful ways. And so that's our hope.
Okay. Where can people find you? Could you just say what your website is, if you have Twitter, etc.?
Sure. Yeah. So if you want news on the game at the moment, you can go to VUToken.io. That's VU as in virtual universe, token.io.
Okay, I feel like I want to ask you more because I've been very like engaged in everything you're saying, but I don't want my video to be too long. So
No, no problem.
I think that's about it. That was very interesting, and I really hope that the virtual universe and the VU token and everything goes really well, and that we're still hearing about it 10 years down the road. And I think it's great that your focus is on the story and the emotions more so than just, I guess, the tech and
That's
the
the key.
money.
That is the key. Yep.
Yeah, I really hope it goes well. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of this with me and sharing with my audience. And I hope that people out there understand how exciting and fulfilling this can be for them and help to make the project grow, because it's still really young and they're looking for funding. And I personally would like to see it go well.
No, it's very much my pleasure.